The day my family kicked me out to be a pawn in their merger marriage, I married a broke delivery boy on a rusted moped on a reckless whim. I never expected that after the wedding he would take over every chore and treat me like glass. I honestly believed he was a man who was perfect except for being penniless, until the charity auction where my ex humiliated me with "strip to pay your debt." In my moment of despair, a motorcade of Rolls-Royces glided in and he climbed out, black titanium card in hand. Who dares bully my wife? Looking at my ex, paralyzed with fright on the floor, then back at this good-for-nothing Julian, my entire world tilted. Serena, you're nothing but a Vance lapdog, a potted plant in Adrian's solarium. If you don't want to be tossed out, learn to wag your tail. My stepmother Evelyn's voice scraped like nails on a blackboard, the sound an instinctive revulsion. Rain poured in sheets, thunder roaring. I stood outside the wrought iron gates of the Vance estate, soaked to the bone, a drowned revenant fished from the river. 10 minutes earlier I had still tried to keep up appearances, until Adrian adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and looked me over as if I were expired canned goods while leisurely smoothing his cuffs. Miss Vance, I don't like roses with thorns. You enter the Graves family either dethorned or with a broken leg, pick one. The string called reason in my head snapped. I grabbed the 82 Lafite off the table, didn't splash it in his face, smashed it down on his 30 million insured hand. Shards glittered across the carpet, red wine bled like fresh blood over the snow-white wool. Filthy, just like life inside these gilded cages. Adrian, keep your sick kinks for the sandbox. I pointed at the well-dressed onlookers inside the iron bars, laughing shrilly through the rain. I, Serena, would rather marry a beggar on Ellis than be your toy. The gates slammed, sealing off the neon world behind me and severing my last retreat. Rain sluiced into my eyes, stinging. Dragging my suitcase with one broken wheel, I staggered down the muddy street. Heel snapped, ankle swollen like a steamed bun, every step a blade. Then a dim street lamp cut through the curtain of rain. Ellis, an electric rust bucket moped that rattled everywhere except its bell, stood beside a tree pit. A man crouched beside it, taking shelter. His washed thin gray t-shirt clung to the sculpted ridges of his back. Rain slid along the pale line of his jaw, pulled at the sharp jut of his Adam's apple, then vanished beneath the collar. So damn beautiful, fragile as cracked crystal, a pearl dropped in the muck, tempting every passerby to pocket it. Even more mesmerizing than the high and mighty Adrian. The crazy urge to spit in the world's face surged straight to my crown. If they thought I was trash, I'd haul home the most rotten scrap and make them gag. I dragged my case over, stilettos stomping a fountain of muddy spray. Hey, I looked down at him, rain dripping from my hair onto his face. He lifted his head slowly, eyes devoid of feeling, cold, deep wells, now flushed pink by the rain, dangerously tempting. He held a dented helmet, long pale fingers laced with thin calluses. Startled by my savage entrance, he blinked, adorably dazed. Fancy you. I swiped water from my face, slapped my life savings bank card against his chest. 50 grand, my entire fortune. Marry me, right now, Alex. I glared, voice fierce as a mugging. Deal or no deal? The roar of rainfall swallowed the city's noise. He glanced at the card on his chest, then at the bedraggled fire in my eyes. The next second the corner of his mouth curved into a smile, unshadowed, clear as skies after rain, yet heart-stoppingly docile. Okay. His voice was husky, magnetic. Wife, I'll do whatever you say. Half an hour later, outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, I clutched the burning red marriage certificate, the chill finally piercing my fever. My brand new husband Julian straddled the clattering moped, long legs comically cramped. Yet he only tilted his head, moist puppy eyes pleading. Wife, the rain's too heavy. Hop on, let's go home. He pronounced home so softly it seemed to circle his tongue, testing, vulnerable. Looking at his poor, obedient face, some of the rage of abandonment ebbed. If the Vances didn't want me, I'd build my own life. Since fate delivered this gorgeous pauper, I'd treat it as charity with benefits. In public call me boss, at home I swallowed, call me wife. Julian's eyes lit up, grin dazzling. Roger that. 1 month into marriage, I realized I hadn't picked up a beggar, I'd adopted a deity to worship. Julian wore poverty like a crown and ate soft rice like steak. He didn't find kept man status shameful, he treated it as a sacred career. Every evening, no matter the hour, that rusted moped waited outside my office, rain or shine. Oh, look, it's Miss Vance's Julian, picking her up on that rust bucket? Here he's a penniless live-in groom. Tough gig being a kept man these days. I'd bristle, sleeves half rolled, when arms slid around my waist. Julian hooked his chin on my shoulder, stuffing my helmet into my hands, warm breath tickling my ear. Wife, they laugh at me for being poor. My temper fizzled under the tease in his voice. He lifted tear-glittering puppy eyes. Am I an embarrassment? Should I sleep in the hallway tonight? Watching this green tea act, my defenses collapsed like wet paper. Shut up, who said anything about the hallway? I shoved his face, gently. Drive. Home, now, he beamed, smug cat stealing cream. Aye, grabbing my gal's tiny waist, he kick-started the moped, blowing the gawkers a kiss. Off to cook my baby noodles. For a moment, threadbare life didn't feel threadbare at all, until Evelyn sent the landlord. Not personally, she dispatched the ogre herself, an obese woman with tattooed thugs who kicked in our flimsy security door. Serena. 3 months overdue. Pay up or pack up. I charged out in a towel. My lease has 2 weeks left, this is illegal, she sneered, pig eyes roaming me. Someone paid double to kill your lease, courtesy of your dear stepmom. Blame her, she waved. Toss it all, especially that pretty boy's junk. Trash belongs in the dumpster. The goons smashed the lamp, scattered clothes. Julian's battered suitcase burst, his entire world trampled under boots. Stop. I lunged, the landlord shoved me down, knee split, towel slipped, greasy stares crawled over my skin. Pretty thing wasting herself on a loser, why not try real men? The hag folded her arms, enjoying the slaughter, then a soft click at the door. Wife. Julian stood there, groceries in a cheap plastic bag cutting red grooves in his fingers. Fish market smell clung to his faded tea. He took in the scene, me on the floor, predators drooling, his usually smiling eyes flat as ice. He stepped inside, placing himself between me and them. Scanning the brute reaching for him, he asked, frigid, who gave you permission to touch her? The man guffawed. The kept boy grows **** strong text ****. That instant, I saw the delight in his eyes. A twisted, perverse delight. Miss Vance, long time no see. He unfastened the buttons of his suit jacket at leisure, sat down opposite me, and tapped the table with his long, elegant fingers. Hearing that Miss Vance drank quite a bit tonight just to land the contract? Back at the Vance house she wouldn't even touch day-old tea. I drew a deep breath, forced down the nausea churning in my stomach, and produced a smile uglier than a cry. Adrian, you joke. Things are different now. Yes, different indeed. With a soft laugh Adrian pulled a document from inside his coat and tossed it onto the alcohol-stained table. It was my lifeline. He leaned forward, and those ever-smiling eyes finally bared their fangs. Serena, you know what this contract means for the Graves Group, and what it means for you. He reached out, meaning to touch my cheek. I turned away. His fingers froze mid-air, his gaze darkened instantly, like a king who'd been insulted. Since you're so proud, let's play a new game. He drew back his hand, pointed at the floor beside his feet, and spoke as gently as if discussing the weather. Kneel. The private room fell dead silent. Every eye pinned itself on me, some mocking, some pitying, most simply hungry for spectacle. Kneel down and beg me, and the contract is yours. His voice quivered with hideous excitement. And dump that deadweight Julian. He offends my eyes. He relished my pale face as though watching an exquisite opera excerpt. What, unwilling? Serena, can your pitiful self-respect feed you? Can it save your company? My hands shook, not from fear, from rage. Rage at an unjust world, at my own helplessness, worse still at the fact that I was actually hesitating. Need me to teach you? Adrian rapped the table, impatient. I'll count to 3. If you don't kneel, the deal goes to someone else. 1, 2. I was about to hurl my glass and refuse, even if it meant mutual destruction. A hand settled on my shoulder. Long, strong fingers, faint calluses, a reassuring warmth. Then a figure stepped between us. Julian. He had appeared behind me without my noticing. He still wore that washed-out t-shirt, an ill-fitting cheap blazer over it, almost comical, and carried a thermal lunch pail like a construction site worker. But his face wore that trademark harmless smile. Brother, no need for the rough talk. Julian spoke cheerfully, voice gentle, even ingratiating. He set the lunch pail on the table. The casual gesture toppled the teapot. Ah. Sorry. He yelped in panic, flailing to set it right. An accidental sweep sent the full pot of scalding tea straight onto Adrian's immaculate suit pants. Shit. Adrian sprang up with a howl. He'd probably never suffered such indignity in his life. You looking to die? He shoved Julian furiously. Julian offered no resistance and hit the floor. The pail flew open, hot broth splashed everywhere. I saw clearly. It was chicken soup. To save money for that bird he'd probably eat pickles for a month. Sorry, bro, I really didn't mean it. Crawling, heedless of the grime, Julian tried to wipe Adrian's shoes, humility itself. My wife's health is fragile, let me drink for her, please, let me. He lifted his head, those peach blossom eyes brimmed with panic and helplessness like a scolded child's. Bro, don't be mad, please don't. Watching him abase himself, my heart felt wrung, aching. Julian. Get up. I lunged, grabbed his arm, hauled him upright. His elbow was scraped raw, blood seeping. Who told you to come? Who said you could drink? Who said they could humiliate you? I shouted, tears streaming. Idiot. That night he could flatten thugs, now he swallowed insult like candy. Julian froze under my tirade, wanting to wipe my tears yet afraid. Wifey, I just wanted to bring soup. By now Adrian was apoplectic. He whipped out a handkerchief, scrubbing at his trouser leg, his civilized mask shredded. Serena. So this is your man? A useless clown who spills things? He seized Julian's collar and flung him away. Scram. Both of you. Dream on about that contract. I shielded Julian, he hung his head. I couldn't see his face, but I knew he was smiling, because I felt the hand at my waist brushing slowly, soothing, or caging something monstrous about to break free. That night we crept home, filthy and defeated. Contract and signed, Adrian offended. Strangely, I felt no regret. Even relief. Relief I hadn't knelt. Relief some fool had taken the drenching for me. Back at the loft apartment, Julian changed. He showered, slipped into that faded pajama top, and laid his head on my knees. Wifey, it hurts. He pointed at the grazed elbow, voice soft and aggrieved. That meanie was scary. I wanted to get even, but I couldn't beat him. I dabbed iodine with a cotton swab, careful. Seeing him pitiful, my heart tangled. Idiot, that's Adrian. Why provoke him? I sighed hoarsely. Now the deal's dead and we'll be drinking Northwest Wind again. Julian buried his face in my lap, mumbling, sorry, I'm useless. I can only cook and wash, I can't help your business. He looked up, eyes rimmed red. If only he could disappear. I gave a bitter laugh and ruffled his damp hair. Disappear? He's the grave's heir, impossible. Julian said nothing, only stared at me, a faint curve on his lips, a gaze too deep to read. At the same moment, the club. Adrian stood on Ellis, livid. Sirens shredded the night. His proud private club was being padlocked. Cameron, fire code violations are severe, we have to seal it immediately. He watched the yellow X-tape slap across the doors, hands shaking. His bespoke suit still bore that stain, glaring under the street lamp. Trash. All trash. He kicked the stone pillar, grimacing. He didn't know. On the second-floor terrace above him, a man in a black coat idly flicked a lighter. Shane leaned close, voice low. Boss, the Grace Group's made its move. If they don't sign, Madam's cash flow snaps next week. Julian's eyes didn't shift, the lighter snapped shut. Let it snap. He might have been discussing the weather. That contract was dirty, she deserves better. And Madam, send her the new acquisition plan, Julian said, pocketing the lighter. Let her think she stumbled into a windfall. Shane's mouth twitched, some kept man, this. Also, Julian paused, glanced down at Adrian still raving on Ellis, and smiled thinly. Make Gravestock hit the floor tomorrow. In the loft apartment, I switched off the light, ready for sleep. Julian rolled over, arms snaking around my waist. He nestled his face into my neck, drowsy and damp. Wifey, good night. I pushed, I couldn't budge him. Damn fool was strong. Go to sleep. I sighed and tucked the blanket round him. In the dark, Julian's eyes opened clear. By moonlight he traced my sleeping features, finger brushing my cheek, resting at my lip. A silent claim, a dangerous oath. Sweet. Only he heard his own whisper. I'll lay the world at your feet, don't be afraid. Adrian nurses grudges. I'd always known. But I never thought his revenge would be this swift, this blatant. 3 days later, a gold-embossed invitation arrived at the office. The city's annual charity gala. Such events are basically high society laundromats, sorry, networking soirees. Evelyn rang specially, voice oozing charity. Serena, though you left home, you're still a Vance. Adrian insisted on inviting you. We're family, business isn't war, don't you agree? I clutched the phone, hearing her prayer beads clack. Disgusting. Yet I had to go. The company's cash pipeline was nearly dry. I needed to show my face, if only for a sliver of funding. 7 p.m. The convention center glittered, gilded ceilings, perfumed air. I wore a black gown from a wholesale market, no label, badly cut, ribs aching, but my spine stayed straight. A hedgehog ready to bristle. Julian followed. Tonight he ditched the faded t-shirt for an unfamiliar white shirt, still poor, but that face of his looked almost ascetic among paunchy moguls. Wifey, it's hot in here. Can I eat those little cakes? He tugged his tie, fidgeting, eyes glued to the dessert table, like a country bumpkin at his first ball. Disdainful glances were already flying. Shut it, I hissed, they're for show, not eating. Stick close, don't embarrass me. Julian shrank, playing scared sparrow, trailing behind. Just then, a cloud of perfume rolled in. Evelyn drifted over in a dark red cheapao, prayer beads in hand, saintly smile painted on. Beside her, Audrey, the real Vance princess tonight, gowned like a butterfly on Adrian's arm, triumphant. Oh, big sister, you came? Audrey cupped her mouth, scanning my dress. That gown, where'd you buy it? Looks familiar. Oh, right, the one our maid tossed last month. Evelyn patted her wrist. Audrey. Mind your tongue. Your sister's independent now, we must be charitable. She turned to me, eyes dripping false pity. Serena, since you're here, stay close to Adrian. After all, in your current position, entering this room at all is Adrian's mercy. Adrian stood silent behind his gold-rimmed glasses, gaze icy, watching a lab rat in a trap. Thanks for the honor. I breathed in and forced a smile. Endure humiliation, secure investors. Honor? Adrian swirled his wine. Then toast the room, Miss Vance. Every soul here is someone you can't afford to offend. Classic hazing. The circle tightened, all eager for drama. I reached for a glass. Audrey squealed and slipped, oops, red wine arcing toward me. I jerked back, but Julian yanked me behind him. The wine splashed across his white shirt, blooming like a blood-red flower. The entire room was dead silent. Audrey cupped her mouth in theatrical horror. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. Sir, you're not stained, are you? There wasn't a trace of apology in her eyes, only gloating. Adrian frowned and half-stepped back in disgust. Filthy. Serena, this is your plus one? Any stray cat or dog can waltz in these days? I stared at the glaring red splash on Julian's shirt. Something inside me snapped. Right then I didn't give a damn about investments or dignity. I wanted to tear those two bastards' mouths off. Adrian, are you out of your damn mind? I stepped forward, ready to explode. A weight settled on my shoulder. Julian slipped off his faded, threadbare jacket and draped it around me like it was the most natural thing in the world. His shirt was soaked, clinging to his lean back, yet his face wore that trademark, gentle smile. Honey, it's fine. Doesn't hurt. He looked down at me, eyes soft as water. Don't be mad, it's bad for you. Clothes can be washed, we won't stoop to their level. I froze, wrapped in his body-warm jacket, breathing in the faint scent of his soap mingled with red wine. In this viper's nest of vanity, this cheap coat felt warmer than any couture gown. My eyes unexpectedly stung. Idiot, I muttered, voice cracking. All right, enough melodrama. Adrian waved a hand as if shooing flies. It's a charity auction, Miss Vance. Why not show a little generosity? He pointed to the stage. I hear you've got a family heirloom? Let's all admire it. My heart lurched. The last thing Grandma left me, a perfect jadeite bangle, my only liquid asset left. Adrian had come prepared, he wanted me stripped of every last shred of dignity in public. Since Adrian wants to see, let him. I yanked the bangle from my purse. My final card, my final bet. Maybe it would fetch enough to keep the company alive. The bidding began. Opening price, 50 grand. 60, 80. It climbed fast, hitting 150. I clenched my paddle, palm sweaty. One chunk of cash and payroll would be covered. 200, Adrian drawled, amused. I whipped my gaze to him. He smirked, contempt dripping. Miss Vance, this is life or death money for you. Going higher? 210. I barked. 3 million, he countered, bored. 350. 5. Every time I lifted my card he topped me, casual as a cat toying with a mouse. Silence blanketed the room. Everyone saw the public humiliation in progress. My face drained of color, nails dug crescents into my palms. Keep going and I'd drown in debt, fold and I'd lose grandma's memory and my last scrap of pride. 5 million, going once. The gavel hovered. Adrian grinned, savoring it. Miss Vance, why not get on your knees and beg? I might generously give it back. Nearby Snickers stabbed my ears. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. Total defeat. Then, a loud, ill-timed burp shattered the hush. Head swiveled. From behind the auction curtain shambled a man, hair like a bird's nest, a yellowed t-shirt, crumbs of half-eaten pork buns still on his lip. Shane, Julian's Can't Read a Map cousin. He wiped grease away, completely out of place, like a bum who'd wandered into Versailles. Adrian barked, "Who let this bum in?" Security. Shane ignored him, stepped behind Julian, and in an instant every hint of idiocy vanished. His face turned solemn, respectful, as he produced from his pocket a black titanium card that glinted cold and regal beneath the chandeliers. "Sir, your credit line is restored." He bowed slightly, voice low. "We just liquidated those South Hemisphere oil fields, the funds cleared." Dead silence. Adrian's eyes bulged. "Oil fields?" Julian took the card, fingers brushing the surface, smile faintly mocking. In that heartbeat the hapless delivery boy disappeared. In his place stood a man who looked down on the world like it was dust. Just as quickly he reverted, slipping the card back into Shane's hand with a furtive glance around. "Shane, this money. I'm borrowing it, don't let my wife find out." He whispered, "It's my secret stash from years of collecting scrap and bottles. If she knows I'm hiding cash, I'm dead." Shane's mouth twitched, he nodded like a fool. "Relax, cousin. Just tell her I, hit the lottery." It happened so fast most brains hadn't caught up. Adrian burst out laughing. "Huh? A black card saved from trash piles? Serena, your circus is hilarious. Try scaring someone with a toy card." But the auctioneer suddenly squeaked, voice shaking, "Black titanium. Verified. One of only 3 in existence." The room detonated in whispers. Adrian's face turned liver-colored. Julian glanced at me as if afraid I'd scold him, then lifted the card and said, "Crystal clear, 10 million. Adrian shot up, chair toppling. "Have you lost it, you penny?" 15. Julian sounded like he was buying onions. 20. Adrian snarled. 50. Julian didn't even blink, then turned to ask gently, "Honey, hungry? That pork bun smelled good, want Shane to save you half?" Me. Silence. This wasn't bidding anymore, it was arson, with cash for kindling, and Adrian the puppet. His hand trembled. Keep going and Graves' liquidity would hemorrhage. Worse, he saw something in Julian's eyes that made his blood run cold, predatory calm. 50 million, going once, twice, sold. The gavel almost split from the force. Julian exhaled, relief flickering. Then, instantly, he morphed back into chastened husband, pressing the card into Shane's pocket and tugging my sleeve like a schoolboy. "Honey. I'm sorry." Head down, voice soft. "I shouldn't have kept a secret stash. But I wanted to buy back your bangle. This money, Shane's loan. I'll work odd jobs to repay him, okay?" I stared, thoughts tangled. Pick trash, earn 50 million? South Hemisphere oil fields? And Shane, who can't find his own shoes, calling Julian sir. I looked from the card that could purchase half the ballroom to the man terrified of his wife, and dug my nails deeper into my palms. Was that cold sovereign the same soft-kept man who shares my ramen? "Julian." My voice was hoarse. "Exactly how much are you hiding?" He stiffened, smile turning guiltier, panic flashing in his eyes. "And nothing, honey, I just didn't want you embarrassed in front of him." "Really?" He pressed my hand to his chest, earnest. "I've never lied to you, promise." Watching him, I couldn't tell if he was performing or hopelessly in love. One thing was clear, this man is lethal, and damnably irresistible. After the auction Adrian turned rabid. Overnight every client tore up contracts, suppliers waved protest banners outside the loft apartment, and the landlord served eviction notice. Despair looked like a 50-square-meter disaster strewn with final demand letters. Knock knock. The rhythm cultured, unhurried, Rowan's signature. I jammed the bills into a drawer and opened up. Rowan glided in, pale silk suit, prayer beads clicking, smile beatific. Audrey trailed her, plus 2 hulking bodyguards. Her gaze swept the peeling walls and sagging sofa, nostrils flaring. "Serena, I heard the company is struggling?" Handkerchief to nose, as though poverty were contagious. "Look how thin you are. Your poor mother would weep. Here for the comedy show, stepmother?" I stayed leaning on the doorframe. Rowan smiled, produced an envelope and flicked it onto the coffee table. It knocked over an empty glass. $5 million. Sign, take your deadbeat Julian, and vanish from the Vance family. The money's yours. I glanced at the envelope. She wanted to buy my silence and my dignity, have me crawl away like a dog. No, I didn't hesitate. "Don't be childish, Serena. Adrian will crush you. You think that man who can't peel garlic can save you?" Just then the kitchen curtain lifted. Julian stepped out, wearing a SpongeBob apron, cradling a bowl of perfectly peeled garlic. Seeing Rowan, he blinked, then beamed. "Mom. What brings you here?" "Have a seat, ignore the mess." He placed the bowl down, unwiped hands grabbing the kettle. "Let me dust the sofa. Don't touch me." Rowan recoiled. "Your stench will spoil my suit." Julian's hand hung midair, he drew it back, lost. He looked at me, then at Rowan, and something firmed in his eyes. He lunged forward and snatched the envelope off the table, the one holding the $5 million payoff, and offered it to me with both hands. "Babe. Take it." His eyes were wild, almost feverish. $5 million. We'll never see that kind of money in our lives. Just sign and we trade up, new house, no more watching people sneer at us. Mom's right, we can't mess with Adrian. Swallowing a little pride isn't shameful. I stared at him, stunned. This was my Julian? While I was being humiliated, cornered, he was ready to surrender for $5 million? "Julian, do you even hear yourself?" I bit the words out, voice trembling. I do. He nodded hard, reaching for the pen. "You're shaking, babe. Let me steady your hand." We sign, we bounce, Mom's waiting. Still talking, he slid the bowl of peeled garlic toward Evelyn, grinning like a lapdog. "Mom, look, freshly peeled, perfect for your stir-fry." Smack. Evelyn's hand flashed. The porcelain bowl hit the floor and exploded. White cloves rolled through the dust. "Get that filth away from me." She flicked her fingers in disgust. "Serena, behold your catch, a spineless kept man. Mud that won't stick to a wall." Julian froze. Shoulders hunched, he stared at the shards and the dirty garlic. I couldn't see his face, but my heart felt skewered. He'd peeled those all morning. A loser, sure, but he'd given me his best. And now even that scrap of humility was ground underfoot. "Out." I hissed it through clenched teeth. "Take your trash and get out of my house." I ripped the check from his fingers. Rip. The sound cracked through the silence like a starter pistol. I shredded the paper and hurled the confetti into Evelyn's counterfeit face. Scraps drifted like snow. I, Serena, would rather starve in the street than sell my husband for pocket change. "Take your stinking money and vanish." Evelyn's complexion turned livid, her kindly mask split, bearing fangs. "Fine. Refuse the easy road." She shot to her feet, venom in her eyes. "Drag her out. Toss this pauper, let's see how long her mouth stays tough." Behind her, 2 hulking bodyguards advanced. "Try it." I stepped in front of Julian, snatched a fruit knife off the table. My hand shook, my glare didn't. "One more step and I'll gut you," Evelyn sneered. "A knife? In a city with laws? Get her, I'll cover the fallout." The brutes exchanged smirks and lunged. I braced for pain, eyes clamped shut, but the blow never landed. The cicadas outside cut off as if unplugged. Then, screech. Brakes shrieked, engines roared like thunder, the concrete trembling beneath us. Evelyn blinked. "Earthquake?" Before she finished, a boom rattled the flimsy iron door. It flew inward, plastered dust showering her face. Through the swirling ash, blackness eclipsed the daylight. A crescent of obsidian Maybachs surrounded the crumbling building, their mirrored hides glinting like predator scales. Men in black suits and shades poured in, moving with drill team precision. 2 kicks, thud, thud, and the bodyguards hit the floor like sackcloth. Audrey shrieked and hid behind Evelyn, knees knocking. Evelyn clutched her prayer beads, face bloodless. Who are you?" "Breaking and entering is a crime." No answer. The phalanx parted, heads bowed, carving a corridor of sunlight. A guy in a cheap t-shirt and bedhead strolled in, Shane, still holding half a pork bun. But the goofy grin he'd worn at the auction was gone, his gaze was razor keen. Ignoring Evelyn's screeches, he crossed to the broken bowl. Julian crouched there, gathering garlic cloves like a scolded child. Liege, Shane's voice cracked. He dropped to one knee, the impact thudding. Your servant arrived late, letting you suffer insult. Punish me. Behind him, a dozen men knelt in perfect unison. Hail, Liege! Their unified roar shook dust from the rafters. Silence. Evelyn's mouth gaped like a fish on land. Audrey slid to the floor, trembling. I stood frozen, knife white-knuckled in my fist. Only the rustle of leaves outside dared intrude. Julian rose. He dusted his knees, placed 2 grimy cloves on the table as though setting down chess pieces, and turned. Gone was the harmless, puppy-eyed delivery boy. His expression was marble, his gaze, ink-black abyss. A lazy, knowing curve lifted his lips, maestro surveying the finale. Babe. His voice, once timid, now carried velvet laziness that sliced the summer heat like an ice blade. Looks like we just saved 5 million. He brushed away a tear I hadn't felt, fingertip cool yet burning. Don't cry. Soft, tender, and terrifying to everyone listening. If the house is dirty, we'll buy a new one. The word Liege detonated again inside the tiny loft. Evelyn's face twisted into a living Picasso, shock, denial, dread, ending in slack-jawed stupor. A joke, right? She laughed brittlely, voice cracking, finger stabbing at Julian. Him? A buffoon who can't even peel garlic clean? You've got the wrong man. Say something. Still no reaction. Julian didn't spare her a glance. He kept his eyes on me, once gentle, now 2 wells that could swallow cities. Babe, scared? He hooked a finger under the SpongeBob apron tied around his waist. Rip, strings snapped. The rag fluttered down, covering the dusty cloves. An elderly steward emerged from the rank of guards, arms bearing a folded obsidian suit that drank the light. Your attire, sir. The man bowed so low his forehead nearly touched dirt. Julian nodded. Right there, in front of us, he peeled off the threadbare t-shirt. Beneath wasn't the scrawny build I knew, every muscle was carved, coiled, dangerous. My throat went dry, nails bit my palms. This wasn't a pushover-kept man. He slid into the jacket, fastened buttons, adjusted cuffs, each move a silent symphony of privilege. The diffidence evaporated, in its place, suffocating power. He straightened his tie, and the room felt smaller. The Julian standing before us now could tilt markets with a nod. He flicked a glance my way, warmth gone, only predatory focus left. Babe. He extended a hand, palm up, invitation and command. Like your surprise? Surprise? More like cardiac arrest. I stared at tendons ridged by years holding weapons, not peelers. Somehow I laid my hand in his, warm, steady, an anchor against the whirlwind. Mr. Pierce. Evelyn squealed, recoiling until the sagging couch stopped her. Reality kicked her in the teeth. Her precious Vance dynasty was an anthill beside this man, and she'd just tried to buy him off like a street beggar. Misunderstanding, she collapsed, makeup streaking with cold sweat. I came to help, truly. For the family's sake. Help? Julian finally granted her a look. One look and her voice strangled itself. She shoved you, left shoulder, red mark, he asked me, casual as discussing dinner. Before I answered, Shane stepped forward, meat bun Shane replaced by cold death. Confirmed, sir. Julian raised a finger, wagged it gently. 10 minutes. Break graves. I want her face, along with every skeleton she's buried, on every front page in the country. Yes, sir. Outside, rotors chopped the air, the cottage windows rattled in their frames. Across town, in Graves Tower, Adrian swirled a glass of Chateau Margaux, savoring victory. Serena, I'll snap every proud bone in you, he murmured, watching Harborview glitter below. The door burst open, his secretary stumbled in, drenched in panic. Sir, stock implosion. Exchange just halted us, down limit. Banks recalled loans, suppliers jumping ship, someone ordered the hit. Who dares touch graves in my city? Adrian hurled the glass. Pierce Global, they outed us for fraud, laundering, proof already trending. Pierce? His empire teetered before he could even finish the question. Adrian froze. That was a true business empire, a ceiling he could never touch in this lifetime. Impossible. I've never had any quarrel with the Pierce family. Ding. A news push flashed across his phone. Shocking high society reversal. Kept man turns out to be business overlord? Graves dynasty collapses in 10 minutes. Vance stepmother suspected in multiple crimes and formally charged. In the photo, outside that shabby loft apartment, the man in a black suit, aura cold and sharp, was carefully shielding the pale-faced woman. It was only a silhouette, but Adrian recognized him at once. The man he had once mocked as trash was now staring down at the world, grinding Adrian into the mud beneath his heel. Julian, the sovereign of a global financial empire, was actually Serena's. Kept Julian? Adrian's eyes were glued to the screen, nearly splitting in their sockets. He tried to call for help, but his fingers shook so badly he couldn't swipe. Every big shot who used to call him brother had, as if by agreement, turned into endless voicemail. It's over, all over. The phone slipped from his hand and hit the floor, shattering into pieces. He didn't faint, but his legs gave out and he slid down the French window like a snake whose spine had been ripped out, watching the glittering world that had once been his implode before his eyes. Back in the loft apartment, Evelyn lay sprawled on the floor, her phone ringing non-stop, every call a demand for payment or a knife twist of spite. The dignity she prided herself on had evaporated in 10 minutes. Julian didn't even spare her a glance. He laced his fingers through mine and stepped over the broken porcelain, heading for the door. Wait. I stopped abruptly and looked up at him. At this face so familiar yet suddenly foreign. For 2 years I'd thought I was supporting him, protecting him. Every time I hit a wall I told myself I couldn't fall, because behind me stood a man who had nothing. Turns out, the man who had nothing was the sharpest blade in the world. Julian. I drew a ragged breath, voice hoarse. You lied to me, so damn much. Julian stiffened. The imperial aura he'd just assembled cracked right down the middle. Suddenly he was at a loss. The old, familiar timidity of the kept man leaked out again. He bit his lip, voice dropping, coaxing, "Baby, I just wanted you to fall for the guy without the halo." His long lashes swept down like a guilty St. Bernard's. If I'd shown up as the Pierce heir, you wouldn't even have looked at me. From now on, the money's yours, the house is yours, I'm yours. Don't be mad, okay? Looking at him, the block of ice in my chest melted in an instant. This was my Julian. Whether he was the infuriating kept man or the crown prince who could make the planet quake with a stomp, deep down he was the same lunatic who loved me to the bone. I sighed, reached out, and circled his waist, burying my face in his expensive suit. I'll let it slide this once. My voice was muffled. If there's a next time. No next time. Absolutely not. Julian's arms tightened, as if he meant to fuse me into his bones. Pressing his lips to my ear, he whispered, half mad, half content, "In this life, the next, and the one after that, I'm yours alone." Off to the side, Shane gnawed the remaining half of a steamed bun, watched his boss's imperial aura collapse in 1 second, rolled his eyes, and waved the phalanx of bodyguards away. Pull out. Everybody out. Stop glowing like light bulbs. Julian opened the door of the stretched Maybach with an exaggerated gentleman's bow, a playful smile tugging at his lips. Serena, home? I shot him a look, mouth curving upward. Let's go. Tonight you peel garlic, 1 clove short and you're in trouble. Julian blinked, then grinned darker and deeper. Yes, ma'am. The door shut, sealing out the uproar, but I knew this was only the beginning. The Vance mess, Adrian's lingering poison, all those who once sneered at me. This comeback has just sounded its first trumpet. Emery blazed with lights, but the glare chilled the heart. In the banquet hall the clink of glasses had long since died. Adrian slumped in the power symbol chair, Ty Askew, bloodshot eyes fixed on the giant screen in the center. Green numbers were going insane. Graves Corporation stock price, each tick vaporizing another few hundred million. The empire he'd crowed about was collapsing at farcical speed. Why, how did it turn into this? He mumbled, nails digging into the armrest until blood beaded and stained the expensive leather. Because you touched someone you shouldn't have. A cold voice cut the silence. The double door swung open. Sunlight knifed through the crack, blinding. Backlit, 2 figures stepped into the doomed domain. Hand in hand, Julian and I walked in. He'd changed into a tailored bespoke suit, and that top-dog pressure made every Graves exec, every society belle who'd ridiculed me, every recording marshal freeze in place. President Pierce. Someone quavered. Then, as if on mute, heads bowed in a wave. Homage to the king. Once they'd looked at me with contempt, disgraced heiress who married a pauper. Now, they didn't even dare meet my eyes. Julian never broke stride, fingers laced with mine, warm, steady and reassuring. We stopped in the center. There, on her knees, was Evelyn. Her pricey Xiangyun silk was crumpled, hair unraveling, the prayer beads she never took off, gone. At the sight of Julian she clawed forward, desperate to clutch his leg. President Pierce. Listen to me, it's a misunderstanding. Adrian tricked me. Toward Serena shut up. He didn't even look, his voice was ice shavings. Shane stepped up and stomped on the hand she stretched out. A shriek ripped from her throat. Shane expressionlessly tossed a folder in front of her. Rowan, see for yourself. Evidence that you bribed a nurse to slip slow poison into Mrs. Vance's tonic. And the car crash that nearly killed Serena, also your handiwork. It's airtight, enjoy your lifetime sweep behind bars. Evelyn's face went paper white. She stared at the file, trembling like a sieve. No, not me. I didn't. Suddenly she screamed, twisting toward me, snot and tears smeared together. Serena. I'm your mother. You can't do this to me. It was all for your own good, for my own good? I stared at the twisted mask she wore, and the wire inside me that had been stretched 20 years finally snapped. No elation, just a drained certainty and a faint sorrow. I crouched slowly, until our eyes were level. Watching terror distort her face, I laughed softly and spoke so only she could hear. Save your disgusting routine. From today the Vance family cuts you off. And I will live better than anyone, while you watch from your cell. Evelyn's eyes bulged, she couldn't believe the doormat she'd trampled had teeth. She opened her mouth to curse, but a marshal slammed her down and snapped on cold cuffs. The great philanthropist who lived on tofu and prayer became a convict in one breath. Julian moved to Adrian. Still glued to the screen, Adrian didn't blink until a folded sheet of paper slapped him across the face. Crisp, loud. His gold-rimmed glasses flew, shattering on the marble. He snapped back, quaking before the man who towered like a deity. It was the debt repayment and merger contract, the one he'd once forced me to sign, loaded with humiliation. Julian, give me a way out. I was wrong. Wrong? Julian picked up the contract and, in front of the hushed crowd, tore it in slow strips. Shreds fluttered over Adrian like mocking funeral confetti. Adrian, when you trimmed people like bonsai, did you ever imagine the day you'd be yanked out by the roots? Two marshals stepped forward, pinned Adrian's once spotless hands that used to direct markets, onto the dusty floor. No. Don't touch me. Filthy. The shriek of a germaphobe whose dignity had been trampled. Julian straightened, dusting his palms as if he'd touched garbage. You wrote this ending yourself. Take him away. Adrian was dragged off like a dead dog with a broken spine. Silence resettled. Sunlight poured through the windows, dust motes dancing in the beams. Everything was over. Julian turned, the razor-sharp aura vanished. Looking at me, his peach blossom eyes softened into the familiar tentative warmth. Baby, I'm sorry you had to go through that. He lifted a hand to wipe my tears, then hesitated mid-air, afraid I'd push him away. My heart felt suddenly light. I stood on tiptoe, caught his hand, and pressed my face into his palm. Julian, thank you, not just for today. For every storm he'd quietly shielded me from these 2 years without my knowing. He blinked, then grinned, bright, sly, victorious. Thank my rusted moped instead. Moped? My eyes flared. That day, you crashed into me on purpose? The day at the intersection, I'd thought his rusted moped accidentally scraped my car. I'd taken the poor miserable guy home out of pity. Turns out, whole thing, planned. Julian shrank like a guilty cat, voice syrupy. Baby, let me explain. He clutched my hand, swinging it gently. If I hadn't, how would you ever have brought me home? You said yourself, anyone pulling a scam like that deserved no sympathy. If I hadn't played broke, I'd still be wandering the streets. Besides, he leaned to my ear, breath warm, voice low and coaxing. If I hadn't pretended to be poor, how could I have let you sugar mommy me and make me your very own kept man? You, I sputtered, cheeks on fire. So I'd invited the wolf in and even held the door for him? Julian, confess, how many other things are you hiding from me? I raised a fist in mock anger. He caught my wrist, tugged me into his arms, and kissed my fingertips, gaze devoted. Not much. Only, this life, the next, and the one after that, I've been plotting to belong to you. Sunlight stretched our shadows, overlapping, inseparable. I figured, this was the finest ending. I don't have to fight alone anymore. I know whenever I look back, a solid chest waits behind me. He handed me the world. And I gave him a home.